Rather than introduce the speaker to you, that Mr. Ray's going to do that, I want to tell you a little bit about how this speaker came here. We've had some wonderful speakers here this year, and I've certainly enjoyed them. We also have at the school a number of people, current parents, alums, and past parents who've given money to the school in support of what we do here on a daily basis, and also with the idea of developing leadership at the school. And you will see that this assembly will speak to that. In this case, our speaker is here as part of the Rogers Leadership Forum. And I just want to tell you a little bit about it. Judy and King Rogers, parents of King W. Rogers IV, class of '98, provided this endowment money in 2000 to fund annual leadership development programs for MUS students. The income from the King and Judy Rogers Endowment for Leadership Development provides the resources for a known speaker on leadership to come to school and makes possible additional service and leadership programming. We're truly fortunate to have this money here provided for the school, and MUS is a story of people giving to the school, providing their resources so we can have speakers such as Mr. Flynn. Now, to tell you more about Mr. Flynn, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Ray. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Well, I'm very excited to have Anthony Flynn here speaking to us today. I've had the pleasure of knowing Anthony since he was a high school student at Germantown High School. Recognized by many as a self-disciplined strategist and a follow-through expert, Mr. Flynn has spoken at Harvard University, Emory University, Georgia Tech, University of Memphis, Biz 1190, which is the Wall Street Journal syndicated radio show, TEDx, and many more TV, radio, podcast, and keynote addresses. He is the author of The Execution Pipeline, a step-by-step guide to moving your business idea from dream to reality. Mr. Flynn is also the founder of the Gifted Foundation, which has a mission to produce marketplace leaders from low-income communities across the nation. He serves on a number of nationally renowned business and nonprofit boards. He also serves as a coach and consultant to a number of high net worth individuals, companies, professional athletes, small businesses, nonprofit organizations, and churches. A graduate of Germantown High School, he was an outstanding football player, by the way. He holds a Bachelor of Business Administration in Sales degree from the University of Memphis, and when he graduated, he was recognized as the top student in that major. He holds a Master of Arts in Religion degree from Memphis Theological Seminary, where he graduated with honors. He and his wife, Nikita, married 15 years, have 2 children, a son and a daughter. His son is 15 years old, a freshman at the Westminster School in Atlanta, where they live. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Mr. Anthony Flynn.
Good morning, gentlemen. Whoa. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. All right. Yeah. I like energy. I like passion. So I'm not going to bore you this morning at all. It's an honor to be here. What a tremendous joy to come back home to my city. I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia with my family. And so it's always a joy when I can come back home and add value to the city of Memphis. And so I'm delighted that, that Barry would think of me, and his beautiful wife is in the audience, Dr. Patty Ray. Where are you? Can you wave a hand for me? Where did she go? Oh, she's way in the back. They made a huge impact on my life, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in a moment, but I dare not begin without acknowledging Patty Ray. A huge part of why I'm able to stand here today, a huge part, is because she stepped in my life in a critical time. And again, I'll share my story with you in a moment. I also want to thank Eddie. Where did Eddie go? He's also all the way in the back. He has been incredibly hospitable, been a joy to work with him. He loves you guys like crazy. He screamed me, man. He grilled me over breakfast and wanted to make sure that I had what it took to actually stand before you guys. So I want you to know that he has your best interest in mind. He's an incredible guy, and you all, it's an honor to actually have him here with you. So I'm going to, normally I can come in and just do pure motivation. I think it's critical that I tell you my story. So this presentation will be a little bit different in that I want to kind of walk you through the fabric of my life because I'm originally from Memphis. So it's rare that I come home and speak in environments in Memphis. I travel all over the country, but because I'm from here, a lot of my story will actually make sense to you guys because I'm actually from this city. And so I want to kind of walk you through my life story and hope to leave you with some seeds that will carry you for the rest of your life. And so just bear with me for a little bit here. But the calling. So every one of us, in my personal belief, has a call on their life. And so I want to challenge you to think about life differently at your young age. It's critically important. First, here's an image of my family. My wife and I actually just celebrated our 16th anniversary. So the bio, I need to update it. Thank you. Yeah, and again, that's important because when I tell you my story, you're going to understand what it took for me to be married and have a family. It's not common in my family for that to happen. So it's taken a lot of work for me to actually stand here. Now, this is an older shot. My son now, he's ninth grade. He's about 5'10", 185 pounds. He's a three-sport athlete. My daughter, is beautiful, Alea. So he attends Westminster. My daughter attends a STEM academy. She loves math and science and dance and all of that stuff. And my wife, actually, after 8.5 years, just returned to work. So she's in a wealth management program at Morgan Stanley just 3 weeks ago. She actually just started back randomly. So that's a little bit about my family. And I always like to lead with that because, again, when you hear my story, you'll understand what it actually took for me to even stand here and be able to tout my family. I'm a huge family guy. I love my children. Not a day goes by that I don't kiss them and hug them. My son's getting tired of it, but I still kiss him anyway, even though he's starting to get bigger than I am. So that's a little bit about. But here's a thought for you. I want this to resonate with you. Your job is what you're hired to do, but your calling is what you're wired to do. Your job is what you're hired to do, but your calling is what you're wired to do. Your job is what you're paid for, but your calling is what you're made for. Your job is what you're paid for, but your calling is what you're made for. Your job is what you do for money, but your calling is what you do for meaning. Your job is what you do for money, but your call. So I spent a lot of time around a lot of athletes, a lot of very successful people. I'll tell you a little bit about some of my coaching business in a bit. And there's a lot of people who get this out of context. And you all are in an incredible environment. MUS, I tout it as, personally, I can say this, top school in this. I believe you're the top school in the state of Tennessee, right? I have some tremendous relationships and friends who graduated from here. And the track record of this institution is incredible. And the leadership here will do an incredible job of preparing you for the marketplace and the world beyond when you graduate and walk out of these halls of this institution. But if you're not cautious, you'll go to some of the finest institutions in the world and you'll get this mixed up. What will happen is I'm working with a kid right now at Harvard who has an incredible story, helped him get in on a full scholarship there. And this is something we have to talk about repeatedly. Because in that world at Harvard, it's all about Bain & Company. It's all about McKinsey & Company. It's all about an investment banking internship. And yet I have to constantly remind him that it's all about the calling. That I know a whole lot of wealthy people who are miserable and unhappy because they're chasing after the wrong things in life. And so I want you to get this, that your calling is what you do for meaning. Your calling is what you're made for, right? It's not about the money. You got to live. You got to eat. Economics are a huge part of it. Capitalism is a huge part of it. But I need you to understand that it's the call that brings ultimate fulfillment in life. Your joy will come out of the fabric of your calling and not out of how much money you earn, not out of your net worth. And I want to plant that seed for you early on so that hopefully you can carry that for the rest of your life. So here's a statement for you. I don't ever recall meeting a wealthy person, and I've met a whole lot of them, athletes, entertainers, very wealthy people, CEOs, etc., you name them. I've never met a wealthy person who did not have a problem that their money could not solve. Let me rephrase that. Every single wealthy person I know, every graduate from Harvard, every graduate from Yale, every graduate from Kellogg, from Stanford, every single person I know has a problem their money cannot solve. It's guaranteed. And so what I run into a lot when I'm working with wealthy people, wealthy clients, is the arrogance that their net worth and how much they earn or their family name and their lineage, the arrogance that comes with that a lot of times trumps the reality of what they're actually feeling on the inside. And that's why they call me, because I'm able to get into the trenches with them and work through some of the chaos that's on the inside in order to try to help them find joy on the outside. So I want you to keep that in mind as you think about your future and as you think about the path that God may have for you in your life on earth. I want you to think about the fact that, again, we want you to be wildly successful. We want you to change the world. We want you to work at some of the top firms, institutions in the world. We want you to go to the best institutions, post-secondary. We want you to do amazing things in the world, but I never want you to get this twisted. I never want you to forget that the calling and the meaning and the significance of your life should always trump the world's definition of the fabric of success. This is an image of my mother and me. Born to a teenage mom. She was 16 years old when she got pregnant with me. What I didn't tell you, and I'll tell you now, she was abandoned at 7 years old. She had a 5-year-old sister and a 3-year-old brother. My grandmother had 5 nervous breakdowns in her life, never drove, never got past 2nd grade, and died at the age of 62. I watched my grandmother get arrested. I had to go visit my grandmother in jail. Why? Because she had a butcher knife held to her sister's throat. And in order to get her enrolled in an institution for mental health purposes, they had to actually come out and arrest her. My mom at 16 got pregnant with me. She went to Central High School. She got kicked out of the house that she was living in when she got pregnant with me and moved in with my biological father. My biological father was the product of a single mom with 8 kids by 3 different men. My dad was the product of an extramarital affair. I was telling this story earlier this morning. That my grandmother, my grandfather was actually married with kids, having an affair with my grandmother, and birthed 4 kids by my grandmother. Now, let me tell you why that's important. It sounds like a soap opera. You can't even make that up in a soap opera. But the reason that's important is because I want you to understand the lineage that I had to come from. See, everybody's not privileged. Everybody doesn't have the privilege to live where they want to live and drive what they want to drive and go to the schools that they actually want to go to. Many of you in the room, my son, my daughter, we're privileged. I'm privileged to stand here before you today. But my mom, not so much. And so we found ourselves following my dad. There was a place called Leonard's Barbecue. I'm not even sure if a place like that still exists in Memphis. But my dad was a dishwasher at Leonard's Barbecue after they graduated high school. He got a promotion to go to a bakery in Peoria, Illinois, to make $2 more per hour. And so my mom and I, we followed him. And it was just before Christmas of 1982. I was 5 years of age. My dad came home one night after working a double shift and decided he wanted to kill the relationship. He and my mom had a lot of chaos and turmoil and drama. And so abruptly, he wanted to end the relationship. So here I am, a 5-year-old kid. We packed one blue suitcase. He put us on a Greyhound bus, and away my mom and I came back to Memphis, Tennessee. Left everything behind, all my little Christmas toys, most of our furniture, everything. We had a single blue suitcase and nowhere to go. And a gentleman showed up at the bus station. This guy eventually became my stepfather, but he showed up at the bus station and he picked us up and he took us back to this duplex. This is 686 Richmond Avenue in South Memphis, right off of South Parkway. By the way, again, this is a duplex. This isn't a single-family home. On the right-hand side is 686. That's the side we actually lived on. Now, this image is not only indicative of the world around me growing up, but it's also reflective of the fact that I did not have a strong community of support to help me navigate long-term life and career decisions, long-term family decisions. I didn't have the type of community around me to help me think about life differently. In fact, this is an example of my community. You see my mom on the far left-hand side in this image. You see what's in her hand. This is her at 19. Next to her is an aunt of mine who has brass knuckles on her finger. You see, cigarettes. You see them partying. They're hanging out. They're having a good time. Look at the bottom left-hand corner of that screen. There's a little head that got cut out of that image. That's a 5-year-old person. That's my cousin Dorothy. Imagine that. The activity that was going on, that's the world that I come from right there. So how does a kid who experiences this as a kid, how do you get out? And you all can understand this. This is Memphis, Tennessee. This is where South Memphis, that picture was taken. I was born, lived in Macklemore Gardens when I was born. All right, then we moved from Macklemore Gardens to Orange Mound. I would have gone to Melrose, but because we moved to Hickory Hill, I ended up at the time, Germantown Middle School was zoned, so I got bused to Germantown Middle School. And let me tell you why that's important. I'm this boy from the hood in Memphis who went to Cherokee, who was on path to go to Sherwood and Melrose. When I came to Germantown, there was huge racial tension. In my first classroom that I walked into, there were 2 black kids, and everybody else was white. And I came from the hood where I had never even interacted with a white person, real talk. So it was a struggle for me to actually be able to assimilate into that culture. And racism was rampant. I got called every word you can imagine. We went to a football game. They spat on us. I mean, it was crazy the kind of stuff that we actually lived through at that age. So I got into 9 fights my first year at Germantown Middle School. I got my first out-of-school suspension. I was a straight-A student at Cherokee, but got to Germantown and saw the gap in education between what's happening in East Memphis versus what's happening in inner city Memphis. And my grades dropped overnight, drastically, right? So my principal at the time, Theodore Wells was his name. I think he's since passed away. He called me into his office and he said, Anthony, you won't survive here. You cannot fight your way through this process. Son, you can't make it in this environment if you continue to bring that attitude and that mentality into this context. And so I had a precipitous learning curve, you all, that I had to overcome as a young man in order to be able to actually graduate and assimilate into that culture. And that's where Dr. Patty Ray comes into the picture. Because in 8th grade, Marlene Williams was my English teacher, and she pulled me aside. We took a standardized test before 8th grade. I scored in the top 1% in the country. And all of a sudden, I'm a kid who was remediated in math the year before. In 8th grade, I got the highest grade in my math class. It was a confidence thing. I didn't have anybody speaking life. I didn't have anybody pouring into me. I didn't have a community of support. I showed you who my role models were. And it wasn't until Marlene Williams believed in me that all of a sudden my life changed. And she called Patty Ray. And before I showed up at Germantown High School, Patty Ray had a meeting with my mom and me. And she said, I'm going to take care of you while you're at Germantown High School. And the fact that I knew I had an advocate in my life was a game changer for me. So I showed up at Germantown determined to outwork everybody in the classroom, determined to outwork everybody on the football field, determined to outwork everybody in the weight room. I chose a path of success in spite of the fact that I saw gangs, I saw crime, I saw violence. I had uncles who were crackheads, cousins who were selling dope. I saw everything you can imagine. I watched a man get stabbed and sit on a stairwell as a kid in Orange Mound. I saw crazy stuff that a kid should never have to see, but somebody believed in me. Somebody showed me a path for success, and all of a sudden, I had a grip on the possibility of changing the outcome of my entire family dynamic. And that's the path that I chose. And I hung on, I clung to every word that Patty Ray said. I clung to every word that those who believed in me had to say because I knew that it was a path to get me out of the conditions of my environment at that time. But here's another major turning point in my life. So I'm a kid at Germantown, and Dr. Ray, she can attest to this. In fact, I remember her calling me in the office to talk to me about attending Sewanee, the University of the South. And I had the Pennsylvania, and so Penn, and Cornell, and Rhodes College, and all these prestigious liberal arts institutions looking for me to play football at those institutions. But remember, I didn't have the same fabric of family conditions. So my stepfather said to me, hey, I'm not helping you pay for school. I don't care if Penn is looking at you, Cornell, or any of those other institutions. Doesn't matter to me. I'm not helping you pay for a dime. You got to figure it out on your own. And so I end up at a small school, well, Division I AA, Cookeville, Tennessee, Tennessee Tech University. I show up on campus. I'm a full football scholarship athlete, but another major turning point happened in my life. That guy you see on the left-hand side in that picture, and he doesn't mind me saying his name, that's Lamar Shaw. Lamar is my roommate when I showed up on campus at Tennessee Tech. The challenge was that Lamar's mom had a 21-year crack addiction. His dad raised him in the streets. So when times got hard and Lamar had nothing to eat, guess what? He turned back to the lifestyle he knew. Lamar was selling cocaine out of our room. He eventually got locked up. He did 16 years of federal time, 9 different federal pens as a result. So after one semester, I give up my full football scholarship and move back home to finish out at the University of Memphis. Gave up everything. Many people say, why would you do that? I'm an 18-year-old kid. Again, I told you about my family structure. I didn't have the support system to help me think and navigate through life's critical decisions. The good news for me is that I was able to rebound. I graduated Student of the Year in my major as a sales major. was intern of the year for a top-notch internship program. I worked for Kraft Foods, R.J. Reynolds, and 3M Kraft in college. R.J. Reynolds had the top sales territory in the United States when I was with the company, then got recruited and moved to 3M, had some major success at a very young age, and all of a sudden I decided that I wanted to devote my life to full-time service in the nonprofit space. And for the sake of time, I'm going to blow through this, but just to say that I spent some time on the ground in Memphis. I actually helped to co-plant a church. It was one of the largest churches in the city, actually in the country. Started a community development corporation. In fact, have you all heard of Gestalt Community Schools? By any chance, or Power Center Academy? All right, so I literally named Power Center Academy when I was here in the city. I wrote the first grant to the Hyde Foundation, and we got that grant. I organized a writing team, named Power Center Academy. Then I got recruited and moved away to Southern California. So I hired a successor who took everything that I was putting together and just blew it up. I mean, he took it to the next level. Derwin is his name, and he's doing an incredible job here now. He actually works for a major venture capital firm in New York. But that's about some of the work that I actually did while here. And I want to just tell you a little bit about what I'm up to now. And then I'm going to give you some principles that you can take away with you for life. So one of the things I do, I have kind of two initiatives I'm working on. One is called The Amazing CEO, where the mission is to accelerate CEOs and key executives. I spend a lot of time around, again, athletes, entertainers, top-notch executives. My board chair for my foundation, which I'll tell you about in a moment, was a Fortune 200 CEO. He owner of a Major League Baseball team, And so just one example, I spent a lot of time coaching some high net worth, high capacity people. And so I decided to kind of formalize this process because I get calls all the time. And so I wanted to figure out a way how I could convert and make money and meaning go together. And that's kind of the direction that I want you to think about as you think about your life and as you think about your career long term. There is a way, gentlemen, that money and meaning can go together. There's a way that your calling can tie to the opportunities for you to actually make a great living for you and your family. And I want you to always think about that. So here I am. I'm in a position where I can actually provide development and coaching to some of the top leaders in the world and yet still feed my family in the process. So I'm not selling widgets, no disrespect to anybody who's selling widgets. But for me, it was important because of my story and because of my background that I figured out a way to tie, economic opportunities into the ability to make an impact on the lives of others. And so we're doing a lot of great work in this space. And so that's one of the things I do. And then this is the second thing. I have a foundation called the Gifted Foundation, where the mission is to produce marketplace leaders from low-income communities across America. And we have operations right now, both in Atlanta, and we're piloting here in Memphis. In fact, I'll tell you a little bit about why I do what I do. So in America, by 2025, there's a projection that there are 14 million jobs that will go unfilled, making a living wage in our country. Yet, currently, right now, we have over 6 million young people between the ages of 16 and 24 who are disconnected from the mainstream economy. So there's a gap in the workforce. There are people who need jobs, and the unemployment rate is as low as it's been in forever. And so companies actually need talent. But the challenge is there's no bridge between the two of them. And so the work that we do on a daily basis is to actually be that bridge builder between companies, corporations that have a knack and need for talent, and those individuals who are on the ground in poverty, who come from backgrounds like my own, who don't have the support system to help them cross over that bridge and enter into the mainstream workforce. All right. And so that's a quick projection on kind of our process. We're actually starting a training on Monday night. So I'm staying over the weekend, and here in Hickory Hill at the Community Development Corporation that I actually launched when I was here, we started training. We had over 245 people actually show. So 245 showed up for orientation 2 weeks ago. And we're going to start Monday night training, and FedEx is one of our committed partners. We also have some other partners that we're actually working on, corporate partners right now, but FedEx is the leading sponsor. In Atlanta, we've done work with Mercedes-Benz Stadium, with the Arthur Blank Foundation, with the Atlanta Falcons, with Chick-fil-A and the Chick-fil-A Foundation. So we have a lot of great stuff going on, and our ultimate goal, again, is to figure out a way that we can close the gap between those in need of employment versus companies that actually need talent on the ground. So this is, of course, a projection of some of those who've invested in our work. In just our beta testing phases, we've been able to raise over $400,000 to actually pour into this project in 2 cities. And so we're excited about the direction this is going. We actually won a contract with the city of Memphis, really nice contract. So we're actually going to be doing some work closely with the city. And of course, Eddie, he's here. I had a meeting this morning, in fact, here on your campus with a couple of venture firms that are actually looking to invest locally here. And so we met on your campus this morning to talk about some possibilities of future work. So there are ways that you can tie meaning and purpose into economic prowess in your life. And I want you to think about that. That I don't want you to spend your entire life just chasing a dollar. I don't want you to spend your entire life allowing other people to define success for you, because there are ways that you can create a path for success for you and your family and still have fulfillment on the inside. Everybody tracking with me this morning? All right. So I showed you some pictures of our board. Some of you guys recognize that guy on the top right-hand, in the top right-hand corner. That's literally one of my best friends. That's Kimmons Wilson III, not the second. And in fact, we're having lunch together on Monday, but he's on my board. Of course, I told you about Nick. Mary, who has worked directly with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I was on the selection team. We helped to give over 20,000 kids in poverty full scholarships all the way through their PhD if they qualified, according to Bill and Melinda Gates, who put up almost $2 billion to make that happen. Of course, we have a former Miss Georgia and Miss America candidate, and Kevin, one of my board members, a Wharton MBA. Kevin was hired by Facebook to help scale Facebook. So he's actually chief of staff to the CMO and head of marketing operations for Facebook. And that's just an example of some of the people on my leadership team. Now, here's what's cool. I wanted to show you this because it's important that you understand. Every one of these people are doing incredible work and making the economy pop in America. Yet, every single one of them cares about young people in poverty. Every single one of them has made it a high priority, a top-notch issue in their lifestyle. It's a lifestyle for them that they also assimilate and incorporate their beliefs into the fabric of the work that we do on a daily basis as a leadership team. So I want to challenge you, do not just chase the dollar. Do not just chase success. Make sure that your life has a path of meaning so that you can actually offer and add value to some of the challenges that our world are facing on a daily basis. Our team, I won't get into the details there, but every one of us has a story that's really similar to the story that I shared with you guys. I want to tell you a quick story about this young man. This is Roderick Burnett. Several years back, several years back, Roderick was in a high-speed chase, pardon me. Roderick got caught up in a high-speed chase, driving reckless endangerment, and ended up getting arrested. He was running from the cops, had a wreck. They caught him, former gangbanger. Because he went through our training program, we have a curriculum we created called The Intangibles, and there's also a nonprofit organization called the Memphis Soup Project. And so we partnered together, and that young man did not look like that, when we got a hold of him. I'll just say that. But through partnership and through another partner we had in the Fraser community, and through a great contact of mine at FedEx, all of us came around this young man, and now he's on staff and on path to have an incredible career at FedEx. And so I wanted to just show you an image. This is what life can look like if you're willing to not just commit yourself to success in this conventional sense, but also if you're willing to commit yourself to actually making an impact on the lives of young people who come from backgrounds that are less privileged than the backgrounds that you actually come from. All right, so I'm going to share a few principles. How much more time do I have? Okay, all right. So very quick, 10 more than 5? He said 5 or 10 minutes. So I want to, real quick, one of the things that got me out, right, was desire. Desire. So I want to challenge you that because you are here, right, and because there have been many privileges set up for you. Again, with my son and daughter, same thing. I don't ever want you to lose touch with the desire. The thing that compelled me to get out of poverty, I said pain and poverty is what drove me to get out. I would see my family members every day struggle with some of the same challenges. And I mean, generation after generation, I wanted out of those conditions. And so I had a desire on the inside of me that drove me on a daily basis when I got up every single morning. Here's another thought. I tell people, your actions prove why your words mean nothing. At the end of the day, I finish this speech and I get off stage and everybody goes back to their normal life. What really matters is what you show people. It's not what you tell people. It's what you show people. Your actions and your behavior. For example, I don't mind saying this, and I know Eddie told me that this was not a norm, but I walked in the cafe this morning and I noticed that there was a table full of black boys and everybody else. Now, Here's something I want to challenge you on, and I challenged the University of Memphis I want to challenge you to take 10 minutes to introduce yourself to someone you don't know who's of an opposite race and or opposite socioeconomic background than yourself. So I want to challenge you before next week is out. I'll give you the whole week. Make sure that you proactively introduce yourself. It could be an underclassman. It could be somebody who's older than you. I don't care. Make sure that you take the time, because the reality is the world has problems that need to be solved that if you don't interact with and assimilate with other people from different backgrounds, you may not realize that you actually have the formula to solve those problems. But because you never engage that culture, guess what? You miss out on a huge opportunity. There's a quick story I want to tell you about a guy named Tristan Walker. He created a company called Bevel. Bevel is a product for African Americans to help black men shave, because our hair literally grows differently. People laugh at that, but it's a fact that our hair grows differently. So for 100 years, razors have been around, and all these major companies, they missed the mark. This guy comes along, young cat out of New York, moves to California, Silicon Valley, goes to Stanford, gets an MBA, works with a major venture capital firm, launches Bevel, signed a $25 million contract with Target, because those who are running all these major brands missed an entire market because they never interacted with a minority group of color. So this young kid in his 20s creates a new product that's going to make him a multimillionaire, potentially billionaire, because he's growing an entire brand beyond just the shaving products, because other people decided not to get out of their box and interact with 100 years. Nobody ever noticed that black people need different products to shave. So I want to challenge you to think about that, right? That there's somebody you're potentially sitting next to. It's not just about color. Again, socioeconomics, family structures, whatever the case, you could be sitting right next to the person that has a solution. Or if you guys partner, you could create a product that could literally change the world. But if you never get out of your box, and if you only hang around homogeneity, you'll never be able to understand it. Very quickly, I want you to think about this. I want you to thrive in ambiguity. One of the challenges of entrepreneurs, and frankly, some of the top-notch people that I work with, it's a challenge when they run up against life's problems, some of the greatest problems in life that create ambiguity. And many people can't take a step forward because they've had a safety net their entire life. So one of the privileges of growing up in poverty, in my case, is that there was no safety net. So I'm willing to take risks that a lot of people aren't willing to take, because I know what it's like to go to the refrigerator, open it, and have cereal but no milk. Have side dishes and no meat. So for me, for many people, the concept of actually going backwards or struggling is a foreign concept, and they can't bring their minds to actually take risks because of the fear of losing everything. Well, a guy like me who came from a background of poverty, I have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So I'm willing to step out and take risks that a lot of people aren't willing to take, because I've learned the discipline of thriving in the face of adversity and thriving in the midst of ambiguity. Does that make sense? All right. Here's a quick image. This is my accountability partner, one of my good friends, Milton Campbell. He's a pastor in Atlanta. Milton was the top track star in the entire United States of America coming out, had full rides to UCLA, Georgia Tech, you name it. Ended up going to North Carolina, Chapel Hill, ran. That's them in an actual world-class meet. And that's Milton passing the baton to an actual medalist in the Olympics. Milton had a knee injury, so he never made the Olympics. But here, if I don't have anything else to say to you, I want you to think about this, right? This concept. At the bottom, you see energy management. So I hear all these people tell me all the time how they don't have enough time. And I say, you have the exact same amount of time as everybody else in the world. So why is it that some people accomplish more in the same amount of time, whereas other people's, they don't accomplish what they say they want to accomplish? And the challenge is, it's not about time management, it's about energy management. Because again, remember, at the end of the day, you don't do what you say, you do what you value. And so for a lot of people, including my adults in the room, if you make this claim to me that you have an issue with time management, I will challenge you 100% of the time and say, no, you don't. Time management is not your issue. Your issue is energy management. The things that you say you want in life, or the things you say you want today, they're not high enough of a value for you that you're willing to make adjustments and adaptations in your life in order to actually get what you say you want. So for me, as a kid, because of the background that I came from, and this is a true story, on Friday nights in the off season, I was taking AP Latin. I would be at home studying because I didn't have the same preparation as a kid that many of my peers had. And so I had a value for putting energy into my subjects because I didn't have the same natural intelligence that a lot of my peers had. And so on Friday nights, while all my homeboys were out kicking it and partying and drinking and at keg parties, I was at home on Friday nights in Hickory Hill with my head in the book studying AP Latin because I wanted out of pain and poverty, and I was willing to put my energy into the things that mattered to me. Not the things that I just said mattered, but into the things that actually mattered to me. So for you, what is it that you actually want in life? All right? What is it that you actually want? And my challenge for you, and including my adults in the room, is you can start today putting your energy and your efforts into those things. All right? Last thing. All right. The fulfillment of a dream does not come pre-assembled. Actually, I got two more quick points. The fulfillment of a dream does not come pre-assembled. It's brick by brick. You don't wake up in the morning and just blink and pass a test, right? Or an exam. You actually have to study for that exam. In like manner, you can't say, I want a dream house, and just blink and all of a sudden that house is built. You actually have to build a house brick by brick. So instead of you falling in love with the end result, I need you to fall in love with the process of getting to the end result. And that's a challenge that a lot of people face in life. They're so in love with the vision and they're so in love with the end result that they fail to think about enjoying the actual process. So the discipline that comes along, I got two last slides, but it's one point. All right. So here's a quick snapshot at what you see in this image is people. This is the Great Wall of China Marathon. Right? And there are people flexing. You see the gold, you see the medals and everything on their necks, and they're at the finish line. And so I want you to have visions for your life. I want you to think about a finish line. But once you've thought about the finish line, all right, no more talking about it. Yeah, think about it occasionally, but now let's start building. That's where most people rest, but here's where you ought to rest, right here. I want you to think about what steps is it actually going to take? This is the Great Wall of China Marathon as well. But what do we see that's different in this image? This is a young lady who's saying, no matter what, and this is a metaphor, no matter what life brings my way, if I have to crawl, I will crawl. If I have to backpedal, I will backpedal. If I have to, whatever I have to do in order to make it, to fulfill the dreams and the goals that I have for my life, I'm willing to make the sacrifices. I'm willing to put in the sweat equity in order to get to the next level. And for me and my personal story, that's why I'm able to stand here before you all today. It's because pain and poverty drove me. And I had visions of getting out of the hood in Memphis, Tennessee, but yet I had to fall in love with studying AP Latin on Friday nights. I had to fall in love with going to my AP English teacher when I was struggling with writing because I knew one day that I wanted to write a book. And so instead of me hanging out and partying and getting in trouble all the time, guess what? I had to be willing to put the energy into enjoying the process and not just having a vision for the end result. And that's the challenge that I want to leave with every one of you young men in here today, is that you have the ability to write your own story and write your own script. All right? And success is out there in the world waiting on you. The top institutions in the world, they're waiting on you. The top companies in the world, they're waiting on you. But it starts right now with the effort and the energy that you put in today. Today, literally today. When you leave out of this auditorium and you go back to class, you have the opportunity of a lifetime to turn and start chasing the dreams and the desires you have. But my last challenge is put your energy into your work ethic and put your energy into the process and not just the end result. Last statement, and I close. Do not put your self-esteem in things and in success and in power and in privilege. Put your self-esteem in your work ethic. Because every single day you get up, you can know at the end of the day, did you give your best? Did you give your all? Did you leave it all on the field? And here's my commitment to you, that if every night when you lie down, you can genuinely and authentically say to yourself, I gave everything I had to give, regardless of the circumstances and the adversity I was up against, then I promise you, you'll look up 20 years from now and you'll be living the life of fulfillment that you actually desire. Love you guys. Thank you for your time.